Last episode, we talked about the Senate hearing into what happened in Uvalde. I showed you portions of that Senate hearing. We'll play them for you in just a little bit. But let's focus in on what really happened. In case you weren't around for our Give You a Rick special, let me give you a quick recap. Almost about a month ago, an 18-year-old did a mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas at Hobbs Elementary. The door was unlocked. Police were involved. The police chief in charge was the person in charge. He was the school district police chief. It took about 70-something minutes for everyone to get in there. At that time, Border Patrol was called. The 18-year-old was shot. While there were still kids out there. And during that time, mountain of evidence pops up. The school district did a timeline, and so did the DPS. And now many people are calling for the resignation of that police chief that was in charge. But just right now, the council decided to deny it because of what happened. But he knew what he did was wrong. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at what happened.
Reform breakthrough on Capitol Hill in response to these recent mass shootings, including those in Buffalo and Uvalde. A group of senators have reached a deal on a package of measures that both sides say would save lives. Our congressional correspondent Rachel Scott starts us off. Rachel.
Trevor, good morning. It was a late night here on Capitol Hill. The Senate advanced the first major gun safety legislation in decades, putting it on track for a final vote by the end of the week. Now, the bill would enhance background checks for gun buyers under the age of 21, giving authorities up to 10 days to review juvenile and mental health records. It would also close the so-called boyfriend loophole, stopping people convicted of domestic violence from owning guns. Advocates say this provision would save lives. Studies show a woman is 5 times more likely to be killed if her abuser has a gun. It would also provide funding for gun violence prevention programs, bolster school security, and mental health. This does not go as far as the president or Democrats wanted. There is no assault weapons ban included in this package. It would also not raise the legal age to purchase those firearms from 18 to 21. But it does mark a significant bipartisan breakthrough after decades of gridlock. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell says he plans to vote yes on this package. The big question, will there be enough Republicans to get it across the finish line, Trevor?
It's been stagnant for so long that any movement seems like a big change. Rachel Scott for us from the Capitol. Thank you. Next, to the new revelations about the police response to the Uvalde school massacre. Top Texas safety official calls it an abject failure. It says officers could have confronted the gunman who killed 19 children and 2 teachers just 3 minutes after the attack began. Maria Villarreal is the latest on the investigation.
As new surveillance images emerge from inside Robb Elementary School during the deadly mass shooting, city council members denying the school's embattled police chief Pete Arredondo the chance to take a leave of absence from his duties.
I make a motion we do not grant the leave of absence for Councilman Arredondo.
This as the actions of officers that day get a searing indictment inside the Texas Senate.
There's compelling evidence that the law enforcement response to the attack at Robb Elementary was an abject failure.
The director of the Texas Department of Public Safety insisting police could have stopped the deadly attack 3 minutes after it began.
The only thing stopping the hallway of dedicated officers from Room 111 and 112 was the on-scene commander, who decided to place the lives of officers before the lives of children.
This image obtained by ABC affiliate KView showing officers equipped with rifles and a ballistic shield they could have used to storm the room at 11:52 a.m. More shields and rifles seen in this image first obtained by the Texas Tribune at 12:04 p.m. And then this image, first obtained by the New York Times, showing nearly a dozen officers in the hallway at 12:46 p.m., moments before they finally took down the gunman. The massacre lasting 77 minutes.
The officers had weapons, the children had none. The officers had body armor, the children had none. I was at training. The subject had nothing. 1 hour, 14 minutes and 8 seconds. That's how long the children waited and the teachers waited in rooms 111 to be rescued.
McCraw also saying officers wasted time searching for a key for a door that wasn't locked. While dozens of officers waited, kids were calling 911 from inside for over 40 minutes.
Is anybody inside of the building? Is advising he is in a room full of
New testimony revealing the chief had no radio to communicate with dispatchers, and police radios were not working inside the school. Arredondo spotted Tuesday after testifying in a closed hearing.
What did he say to the parents?
He recently told the Texas Tribune he felt he was in an impossible situation and wanted to save as many lives as possible. But McCraw says Arredondo made terrible decisions.
Mistakes were made. It should have never happened that way.
Families now demanding transparency. Vinny Salazar lost his 11-year-old daughter, Layla.
We're going to hear from the parents and give you inside and take you inside that Senate hearing when we come back. There is more details happening in Uvalde. Like I told you yesterday, the Senate is holding more hearings. There's only a lot of hearings about what had happened that day. Now one of the parents is speaking out. Let's continue.
Know what took them so long to act. If they've got nothing to hide, then everything should be open to the public so that we can hear what happened.
And Maria Villarreal joins us now from the Texas Capitol in Austin. Also have senior investigative reporter Aaron Turski with me here in New York. Maria, though, we want to start with you. Obviously, you've been covering the story from the beginning. I know you were chasing the chief into that elevator, trying to get us some answers that he's not really giving right now. But first, I want to ask about those new surveillance images that we saw in your piece. Some of the first officers in the hallway that appeared to have the equipment to take down the shooter. Of course, they failed to act. How are the parents reacting to this news?
You know, it's interesting. I think you would expect that the parents would be extremely angry in this moment. I think what they are doing is taking a beat before they give their opinions. They want to see the full report. And most importantly, they want to hear from the men, women, the people who were inside the building responding to this shooting. We have yet to hear from any of those people. McCraw, he's the director of DPS, but he was not in the building. So they want to hear from Chief Arredondo, and they want to hear from other senior law enforcement officials, veterans, that were inside responding to the shooter when he was still alive.
And we know that those families are very dedicated to getting those answers. Aaron, we heard that testimony from the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Stephen McGraw, said this shooter could have been neutralized within 3 minutes. And the only reason he was not was because the police chief not making the call on scene. Is this just confirmation of what we thought we already knew? Is this an explosive revelation?
It doesn't change the narrative, because that was what was said from the beginning, that the chief misunderstood the situation, thought that the subject was contained in an office or in a classroom, not there with children, as we now know that he was. But it does deepen the questions about why Arredondo believed what he did. And according to the testimony that McCraw gave, he made terrible decisions and terrible choices. Was it because he didn't have a radio? Was it because he wasn't in proper communication? Arredondo has said he didn't fully believe he was in charge that morning. But McCraw said, if you're the one that's making decisions and you're the one giving orders, then you are in charge. And it does raise a question, I think, in some minds about whether anybody, Arredondo included, could face charges. Negligence is a very high standard.
And those mistakes very easily, I think, could be argued possibly cost them lives here. Maria, we know that the chief sits on the school district city council there. He was denied that request to take a leave of absence. We heard the round of applause when that motion was rejected. Did they explain why they denied his leave of absence?
I mean, city council members were very clear. We want to be transparent. I think they realize that they are losing the PR campaign, that their community does not trust any elected official right now, especially Chief Arredondo. What this is going to do is it's going to force him to show up for city council meetings, to come out in the public and to face the music to some extent. Here's the thing. There is some policies in place that basically say you cannot ask for a city council member to be removed until he has been in there for 8 months. We spoke with a family member that said, I already tried to do that. So by making him show up to these city council meetings, if he doesn't show up several times, there is an idea that he is abandoning his position, and then the city council can take some sort of action. So right now, this will force him to come out of the hole that he's been hiding in.
Really nowhere to hide. Aaron, I want to go back to what the chief did or did not know as he's making these decisions. We learned in Maria's report the communications failures and the problem with radio reception. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that the training for these kinds of situations is the officers are supposed to just continue until the active shooter is neutralized. Does communication failure make a difference here?
In fact, the training that these officers took just 2 months before the shooting in March dictated that even if you don't have a good understanding about what's happening inside the room, you go in anyway. That was a conclusion that was drawn after the Pulse nightclub shooting. Even if you don't have good information, go in. And here there's evidence that officers did have some information about children calling, saying they're in a room full of victims with the shooter. Trevor, it is stunning. More than 20 years after 9/11, which brought radio communication and operability to the fore, that we're still talking about radios, the most basic method of communication for police, that don't work.
Especially when you're talking about 45 minutes or an hour delay where one person couldn't walk outside to have communication. Aaron Turski, thanks for being here, and Maria Villarreal on the ground for us in Texas. We appreciate all of your work to keep digging to get us answers for us and for those families too.
So what do I think about this? Well, I'm finishing taking notes right now, but so far this is what I figured out. Sticking the finger in the fan and cutting the arm off. You might be asking me, well, what do you mean by that? Well, I watched an episode of Everybody Hates Chris. And I learned an important lesson from that clip, and if I had that clip right now, I would show it to you, but I didn't have time to set it up because I turned it off. I don't want anything else running. But I can't give you an example. Sticking the finger is the equivalent of doing something stupid. Cutting the arm off, you won't do it again. So in this case right here, for talking back to your parents, cutting the arm off is talking back to your mom. Talking back to your parents, like your mom or dad. Cutting the arm off is going too far, like kicking out your son. So if you cut the arm off because you didn't like it, because you stick the finger in the fan, you didn't like it. If you cut the arm off, you won't do it again. That's the equivalent right here. And right here, this is the formula for this case. Sticking the finger in the fan was inside doing nothing. Meaning they were just sitting there waiting for hours. Which leads me to cutting the arm off. Waiting hours for the door to open while children are waiting. And we had this one too. There we go. Waiting inside the door while children were waiting, and putting officers before the children. That is very, very unacceptable. That's just unacceptable behavior. That's just very unacceptable behavior coming from someone. And for someone to be doing that, that would be the equivalent of doing something stupid. When we come back, the full Senate hearing. What went on during that time? Don't go away. If you're just joining us, we're focusing on the Senate hearing right now. We just heard from the City Council that they're not moving to place them on a leave of absence because of what happened. But like I said, cutting the arm off and sticking the finger in the fan and cutting the arm off. That's the equivalent of doing something stupid. Like I said before the break. Sticking a finger was inside the school doing nothing but sitting there waiting. Cutting the arm while I was making out with the door while children. And putting officers before the children. That's the equivalent of cutting the arm off. That's the principle. You may not get this, but someday, when you have kids and you decide to throw them out, you will watch this episode and you will hear what I have to say. Let's get to those hearings.
That's building 1133. The crash at 1128 enters the building at 1133, or 1133 exactly, and 1133 in second. And shooting at the classroom, and he enters what we believe is 111. I say believe. And at this time, 111. And he begins shooting. If you go over your timeline, look at this, more than 100 rounds were fired initially, another 11 rounds were fired in 1137. And two officers were approaching. That the rooms, the walls inside the interior are sheetrock and bullets go through it. The two were grazed at that point, retreated. I can tell you at 1136, before, and three Uvalde officers in the west door. 135, 136, and two Uvalde officers. Again, seven officers right now in the building 1136. That's a pretty quick time, considering all the different factors in that regard. There was never a school resource officer on the scene. A school resource officer did respond, and when he responded to the location. You heard a man with a gun. So he's off campus, he's in his vehicle, he responds rapidly. As he does, he sees what he thinks, when he drives in, he sees what he thinks is the subject back here. It wasn't the subject, it was a teacher. He drives directly towards that subject, the teacher, and says, I'm out with the subject. So it had already been reported on the radio, man with a gun, okay, at the school, after a crash. He thinks he's got the subject, he drives quickly, he drove over 50 miles an hour into it, going towards the subject. Unfortunately, that wasn't the subject was right here. He passed the subject as he went. That's why some of the confusion early on. Now, the doctrine for active shooters is clear. I mentioned before. It's 2X says it. Hey, you stop the killing, you stop the dying. The other part of that doctrine is you isolate, you distract, and you neutralize. Everyone's taught this. You require anti-cold training, you practice it, you preach it. This is the doctrine, and it's recognized that the sound of gunfire. But when you get to gunfire, you don't stop. Okay, when you get there, you run into gunfire, okay, and it's so important to do so. And I'll tell you what, I've said it before, I hope I've done this before, there's no doubt in my mind that those officers were gone, any one of them would sacrifice their life for those children. Any one of them. If they knew there was kids in that room and teachers in that room, and great confidence in those police officers, local officers, would have done what's right. 1140, we have two here, 1140, we have two. The first report, officers contained in the office. Contained is not a word for active shooter. Contained is a barricaded subject. Contained is a situation where you may have a hostage and you need a SWAT team if you have time. The siege, you first you contain, then you communicate with the subject, then you call the SWAT and you create a immediate action plan. That's not what this was. It was never anything more than an active shooter situation. But at some point, it's contained in the office. And it has been reported he did not have a radio with him. He did not. He got pressure. This is the conversation that he had. And you can read it yourself in your notes. Hey, turn on. Can you hear me? Let me tell you, where's the brass? 15th as possible. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Dispatch response. We heard her talking in the background and asking what room number. Chief, is the teacher with him? Is the teacher with him? Is the teacher with him? Is she in the room that he's in? Can you hear it? Ma'am? Ma'am? Dispatch, I'm right here. Chief, ma'am, is the teacher with him in this classroom? Dispatch, in another classroom, she's in room 102. Another person, possible shot across from her. Within 102 is 112. Is the active number. Keep very under, okay? We have him in the room. He's got an AR-15. He's shot alive. He's in the room. He hasn't come out yet. We're surrounded, but I don't have a radio with me. Please let all units know he's going to be in a room. He's in room 111 or 112, and we're here. On the hallway, Sergeant, another sergeant are here. We need this place surrounded. We have SWAT. I need to set up south side of the building, which is the nearest location to the funeral home. Dispatch confirms SWAT location. Before we honor, yes, they need to be outside the building prepared because we don't have enough firepower. Right now it's all pistols and he has an AR-15. Get the SWAT team set up by the funeral home, okay? And we need, yes, I need more firepower in here because we have pistols and this guy's got a rifle. If I don't have a radio, if somebody can come in, the dispatcher, Chief, Ariando, but I am going to drop it when he comes out of the door, all right? So I need you to bring a radio for me. And give me my radio. For me, I need to get one rifle. Hold on. I'm trying to set him up. For a second. I'm going to set him up right now, okay? Do me a favor. Call me when SWAT is set up. I'm going to have you a vibrate. No. Call me twice if you have to. It's okay. All right. Thank you. The questions have been asked about who's in charge. But it's horrendous stuff that when people believe and what they hear, that when the FBI shows up, no, they're not in charge. Okay? When other agencies show up, they're not in charge. It's the original, it's the agency that has the original jurisdiction is in charge. If you have options, just because you're in charge, you have the authority, you're the ranking official, senior official on site, you can actually delegate that down. In my case, the lower I delegate it, the better. In terms of sound decision making, or you can delegate to another agency, or you can ask another agency to take the lead. This is common practice in ICS, incident command. We practice that in Texas. We always practice it. We preach it. We're very careful. You'll find when you talk to the experts in the alert training program, is self-deploying is a risk. Deciding who's in charge, deciding on your own to take action without it being properly coordinated is a risk. One of the challenges you have in these type of situations. But nevertheless, in terms of if you're going to issue commands, okay, if you're going to direct action, you're the ranking official from the agency that has jurisdiction, you're the on-scene commander. Gunfire happened again at 11:40. Let's assume that was a barricaded subject. He was contained, but he fires again. And he's room 111 or 112. It's not reasonable to expect that there's children and teachers in that room still alive. 41, we've already beat officer. We believe he barricaded in one of the offices. They're still shooting. More disinformation. He's not barricaded in an office. Okay? He's in a classroom, 111 and 112. This guy's asking, the door's locked. Which the Uvalde PD officer replies, I'm not sure. We have a hooligan to break it. The hooligan tool, so you can just break the lock and move in at the door. At 11:41, one person responded to the room to the east hallway. There are 2 constables, fire marshal, UPD officers. So officers continue to flood into the particular area. So we had 11 to begin with. We had another 4 officers to it. DPS trooper was the first DPS officer to arrive.
Director McCraw, we've got to ask you this.
Yes.
As best you can, speak into the mic.
Oh, yes, sir. I apologize.
So the system can pick it up. If you
Yes,
can
sir.
pick that mic up, that would be
Yes, sir.
great.
All right. How about that, sir? Does that work?
Thank
Very good. Thank you, Chair. At 11:42, we had a DPS trooper and 2 PD officers enter from the east hallway. She was there there less than 2 minutes, looked around because at that point in time there's multiple officers, and she left the building to find other duties as assigned. 11:44, another suspect hung around. 11:44 later, UPD officers have some officers there available to get everybody back. UCISD officer Ruben Reese and one of our sergeants, Sergeant Maldonado, actually drove Officer Reese to the scene. He enters at that point in time. And then the officer says, "You need to get out of the hallway." Well, before I need to talk about Officer Reese. He knows that she's been shot. He's talking about his wife. He got a call from his wife. His wife was in room 112 and later died. An officer says, "They need to get out of the hallway," to which an officer responds, "Chief is in there. Chief is in charge right now. Hold on." 11:51, some Border Patrol agents at the end of the west door. There had been a call earlier for BORTAC, and BORTAC was en route. These aren't BORTAC agents that first responded. At 11:52, there's a first ballistic shield that enters the west door. 11:52 later, UPD officers and units just showing up. Can you help with crowd control? So officers after 11:52 are being diverted to crowd control activities. 11:53, unknown officer informs a DPS special agent that they need right now is a perimeter. Someone comments on whether there are still kids inside, to which the DPS special agent responds, if there is, then they just need to go in. Someone comments about whether there are still kids, in which he responds, if there is, then just need to go in. He enters the west building, is directed on where the suspect is focused on. This is from a body camera, and you'll note that any information I'm using right now came from, it's color coded. So when it's blue, it's body camera. You know, obviously, from video surveillance, it's either, whether it's funeral home indicated, and of course the Uvalde PD recordings as well. And you have that in your booklet. After some time, the DPS officer said, "If there are kids in there, we need to go in right now." They said, "What's that?" That whoever's in charge will determine that, because the one he recommended, if there's kids in there, we need to go get them. And then later on, the DPS said he left the scene to look for kids, found a young boy in the restroom in the west building that was hiding, and then went outside to look at, search other classrooms. There's a PD channel recording. Again, it's critical that let the PD take the point. 11:58, after an unknown officer was asked where the shooter is, another unknown officer advised the school chief of police is in there with him. There's a 911 call at 12:03, and that's the call from Chloe, the first time Chloe calls. And of course, it's heart-wrenching to listen to her. She's in room 112. Okay? She was actually the only child in room 12 that was uninjured. Yeah, there was 8 children killed, 2 teachers killed in that room. And of course, she was uninjured. 9 children were injured in room 112. 12:03, the second ballistic shield enters the west door. 12:04, the third ballistic shield enters the west door. And yet there's no action. 12:09, PD officer, go around and get the master keys to the room. Elements of the BORTAC arriving at the elementary school was at 12:09 or 12:10. And I think the first BORTAC unit members went into the building at 12:15. During that time, the Uvalde ISD Ariano requests master key. Uvalde ISD Chief Ariano gives instructions to officers to have a sniper on the east roof. Master key. There's more than one master key for the west building. Anytime the locks were changed, there was another master key for that lock. So you may find a master key, but there's 2 master keys. You've got to hit both master keys. So there was some frustration and discussion about this master key doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because that master key is not for that door. (12:16), USC chief says, "I just need a key." The chief says, "Tell them to expletive wait. No one comes in." 12:20, the 4th ballistic shield shows up. At 12:21, importantly, the suspect fires 4 rounds. So if this is a barricaded subject, why is he still firing? Thank you. The chief says, in 1228, let me back up to 1221. Can you get a breaching tool, like a trailer house, like for a trailer house? The chief, we've lost 2 kids. These walls are thin. If he starts shooting, we're going to lose more kids. I have to say, we have to put those to the side right now. Uvalde chief attempts to communicate with the suspect in English and Spanish. Now, the entire communications was always one way. The suspect never communicated. So it's not communication. We're talking at. No, no, officer, there's a teacher shot in there, to which the Uvalde PD officer replies, I know. The chief, people are going to ask, why we're taking so long? We're trying to preserve the rest of the life. The chief, we have a team ready to go? We have a team ready to go. Have at it. Then 1227. 1228, the chief. There's a window over there. Obviously, the door is probably going to be locked. Probably going to be locked. That is the nature of this place. I'm going to get some more keys to test. 1228, the chief. These master keys are working here, bro. Aren't working here, bro. We have master keys and they're not working. The chief, at 1230. Okay, we've cleared out everything except for that room. We still have people down, but just pass the flag to the right. But we're ready to breach, but that door is locked. 1233. The chief. I say we breach through those windows and shoot his expletive head off through the windows. This is an hour and a half after you enter the building. An hour after you enter the building. 11:35, a hooligan tool arrives through the west door. At 12:38, the chief attempts to communicate with the suspect in English and Spanish. At 12:41, the chief says, just so you understand, we think there are some injuries in there. And so you know what we did, we cleared off the rest of the building so we wouldn't have any more besides what's already in there, obviously. 11:42, the chief says, we have an expletive problem getting into the room because it's locked. He's got an AR-15 and he's shooting everywhere like crazy, so he stopped. 12:43, Uvalde chief, we gotta get that expletive door open, bro. They can't get that door open. We need more keys or something. 12:46, the chief says, if y'all ready to do it, you do it. But you should distract him out that window. 11:47, the sledgehammer enters from the east hallway. 11:50, the breach and termination of gunfire. At the time, there was a stack of 7 officers that went in. Actually, only 4 went directly in because the door closed. This is what happens in these operations. It left the 3 out, 3 minutes thereafter, shortly thereafter. 5 officers fired rounds at the subject, killing the subject at that time.
There we go. Now we blame the chief for this. The chief was blamed, and the police was blamed. But there's more still to come. Now, it's day 2 of the Texas Senate hearing, which is happening today, and we're going to cover that for you on Friday. That completes Give Me a Break for Friday. For Wednesday, we'll see you again. Join us on Friday for Give Me a Break. Have a good day, everyone.